Hello, this is Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, we are going to do the last part of 2024 March paper 2. This is the fifth part of my series of videos on the same lesson. So if you haven't already, do watch the previous 4 parts and then come to this one to be able to solve the entire paper. Today we are going to be learning how to design a study in the paper 2, which is worth 10 marks and more because there are follow questions also, and very easy to score provided we do it in a systematic, organized way. Large questions always look difficult, large assignments look difficult, but actually they are so formulaic that they are the easiest ones to score on the paper. So just take a step-by-step approach. There's a lot of unnecessary debate around these type of questions, which I don't understand why it is, because students will come and tell me, this teacher told me write these features, the other teacher told me write those features, my friend told me write these features. What are we debating about? In the current syllabus, when they have directly given us the features which we have to cover in the study, why have they given us that? To resolve all these debates. Once and for all, they are telling us what we have to cover in the studies. This is something that the previous batches did not have. There were no fixed guidelines on what is to be covered in designer study questions. You have it in the syllabus. Now, why do you need to think about which teacher is correct or which student is correct? Isn't it obvious that the syllabus is correct when it comes to how to answer any question? So simply refer to the syllabus. That's all you have to do to answer this type of question. Okay, so let's read the scenario first carefully. Henry feels relaxed when he smells flowers. He thinks that pleasant smells could influence daydreaming. Describe how Henry could conduct a laboratory experiment to investigate the effect of pleasant smells on daydreaming. Do not describe sample or sampling technique or ethical issues or guidelines in your answer. They are so kind that in the syllabus they have mentioned that you don't have to do sample and ethics. Still they are reminding us in the question. So definitely you have to respect what is given in the question and do not waste time describing the sample or ethics. This year, my observation with my students was many of them went on telling me that every study has to be answered according to experiment. That is absolutely not true. Like if you look at the specimen paper, there was a longitudinal study that you have been asked to design, and then so many times there are interviews, observation, correlation, different questions which come in the paper. Every study is not an experiment. Why have they taught you so many different research methods if every study was an experiment? So it doesn't make sense. Still, I think this practice is going on in some schools where teachers are just teaching one type of designer study, which is experiment, and they are telling students this, that no matter which study is asked, you have to give IV, DV, hypothesis, this, that. Not only are they teaching incorrectly by saying that only experiment is to be designed no matter what comes, on top of that, they are also mixing up features which are given for AS level and which are given for A levels. Some features in the A levels are not to be included in study plans in the AS levels. They are confusing those also. That's why I said just follow the syllabus. All confusions end once you see what is given in the syllabus. Another thing I noticed last year with one of my students from some particular school, the teacher absolutely told them to disregard what is given in the question. So what she told them was they have to only write about sampling techniques and ethics, even though it's specifically said here and in the syllabus that you don't have to cover that. Why would you disregard what is given in the question? I mean, why are they writing it in the question if it is to be disregarded? So it doesn't make any sense. If your teachers are telling you things like that, all I can say is in the internals, in your school, when you're answering a question, do whatever the teacher says, because I know lots of teachers are going to cut marks if you don't do that. But when it comes to the board exam, please follow what is given in the question. Have respect for that, because it's not that they're going to down mark you for discussing sampling and ethics when it's not mentioned, but what will happen is they are just going to ignore whatever you have written about sample and ethics. So you're getting no credit. Why are you wasting your time in something which will not get any credit at the possibility that you might not be able to finish your answer because you're writing irrelevant things? So definitely don't follow such advice which goes against the syllabus. They've not asked at the AS level to write aims, hypothesis. They have not asked you to write ethics. So strictly what they've asked you is the procedure of the study. So we are going to follow that today. Now what you should do, also students ask me, how should we prepare? Should we have an outline? Yes, you should have an outline in your mind at least, or you could write with a pencil on the paper before beginning. So why you write with a pencil or why you write in the margin or in the end is so the examiner knows that's rough work and they don't need to go through it. See, when you see this is a study, first you note, okay, it's an experiment. Like here I'm telling you how to think about it. So first you know design is an experiment. The key feature of an experiment is that it should have an IV and a DV. IV should be manipulated because it's a lab experiment. Anyways, they've deleted natural experiments from the syllabus. So in your case, any experiment will involve manipulation. So immediately you should start thinking about the manipulation. Means at what levels the IV will be manipulated. First, identify the IV. IV is definitely smell because smell is influencing something. Okay, now one smell, Henry is already decided on flowers. So definitely one level or one condition is going to be flower smell. What would be the other? That's what you have to think. Because IV can't be manipulated in only one condition. Has to be at least two. I would also suggest you have only two. Students, to show that they know a lot, they would write 3, 4, 5 conditions of the IV. When it comes to data analysis, then they don't address half of the conditions or manipulations which they have given, and that looks really bad. So just stick to 2 for simplicity. Don't get into unnecessary details. Okay, so smell of flowers will be one manipulation. Another manipulation could either be no smell, which I would prefer, or it could be some unpleasant smell, or it could be another pleasant smell instead of flowers. The only thing is, if you take another pleasant smell, then comparison is going to be a little difficult because both are pleasant. So I would suggest avoid that. Take no smell or take an unpleasant smell like something rotting or something very sharp. If you want a comparison of that kind, I would just like a basic baseline comparison, so I'm taking no smell. Also, many students tell me, when we are planning, shouldn't we do it step by step? When you're writing, you should do it step by step. When you're planning, you're just making a broad outline to refer to. Planning does not have any format. It should just be in a way that makes sense to you. So what makes sense to me is to first note what is the IV and the DV. DV is daydreaming. Now, it's not absolutely necessary, but it is understood that you will have to operationalize the DV somehow. Like in the sense, even if you don't write explicitly, this is how I'm operationalizing. It is expected. Somewhere you will have to mention in the procedure how you're measuring the DV. That's a very key point. So when I'm planning only, I like to think about it. How will I know whether participants are daydreaming? How can I find out? I think self-report is best according to me. Somewhat like daydreaming also reminds me of the Dement and Kleitman study. So I would like to ask them directly what they have been daydreaming about or something. So here in operationalization, I also have to think about exactly what aspect or feature of daydreaming I want to investigate. Like, are they daydreaming more? Like, I just want a frequency that because of pleasant smells they are going to daydream more, or I want to know the quality of their daydreaming, like what exactly are they thinking about something pleasant because of smells. Because here they're just saying influences daydreaming, and they also say relax, feels relaxed. So somewhere I feel Henry feels they're just going to daydream more and feel like relaxed, because when we daydream we get that pleasant relaxation feeling. So when they say influence, they have not mentioned it's the quantity of daydreaming or the quality. I would like to take it as quantity. I would like to see how frequently they daydream and how long they daydream. I'm not so interested in the content of their daydreaming. Why? To be honest, because it is complicated to get into qualitative analysis. That is why. So I don't really want to get into what they are daydreaming. Then I will have to indicate, seeing some patterns or themes in their daydreaming. So to avoid all of that, I'm going to take simple quantitative measures, frequency and duration. Okay. That is the IV. DV for me, that's the main thing in the experiment. Operationalization of IV. See, strictly speaking, IV operationalization also means making it very measurable and concrete. But for our syllabus, it does, even if we just give the levels. So I'm just sticking to that. But DV operationalization has to be concrete. So in DV operationalization, we do have to mention exactly what we are looking at in the DV, which measures or which statistics we are going for. Like I have mentioned, frequency and duration, that has to be there. Okay, besides that, mentally I can just think 1, 2, 3, like what participants will have to do in terms of procedure. So definitely they'll have to come to a laboratory. It's a lab experiment, so they'll have to come to a special setting. Then there I have to think about, like, will they just be sitting? Will they be doing some task? Like, will I deceive them into doing some task? Though deception is not a concern, but am I giving them some instruction to do something and then I'll spray on some pleasant smell? What I feel is that, again, to keep it simple and to avoid unnecessary confounding, let me just tell them to wait in the laboratory. So wait for what? Like, to give what instructions I'm going to be talking about. Let them just be told that they are waiting for their turn for a maths experiment in which they have to solve maths problems. So they don't actually have to solve any maths problems in my study, but they assume that they are waiting for that. And as they are waiting, I keep on delaying their wait outside such that they have to wait half an hour. And during this half an hour, for half the participants, there is floral smell being sprayed on where they are waiting in the room, and for half the participants there is no such smell which is being sprayed. I will mention over here, experimental design is definitely independent groups and it is going to be random allocation, though random allocation is not compulsory at the AS level to mention, but I'll just specify how they are put into the conditions as a part of the procedure. I have to mention some controls or standardization. So in terms of standardization, the amount of waiting period, the duration of waiting is going to be same for both the groups. The instructions given to them are going to be the same. Where they're sitting, the comfort level, like say they're waiting at a sofa, it's going to be the same for both the groups, things like that. So when I'm writing also, I can elaborate more. When it comes to controls, what extraneous variables could confound results? I would request my experimental assistants who are talking to the participants not to wear on any perfume or smells which could take away from the smell in the room. I want only the smell I have sprayed in the room to influence them and not what the my assistants are wearing. I would also not want any other smells to come into the room, so I'll keep the windows closed, doors closed, things like that. And I will start spraying only once everyone's in the room, or if I'm individually testing, let them be in the room. Then I'll close the doors and spray the smell. So things like that come in my mind in controls. So for an experimental study, specific features they want in the syllabus are IV, DV, control, standardization and experimental design. I have thought about all of that. General features, I have thought about the procedure to some extent. Now I have to think of the rest of the procedure. So in rest of the procedure, once they have waited and they've got the smells and all, I will have to give them a questionnaire asking them to estimate how long they daydreamed and how many times they did that. So I will mention what questions are going to be on the questionnaire, and then I will get into types of data, because it is ethics are not to be mentioned, so I won't specify anything about thanking them or debriefing them. My procedure will just end with them like giving me the data, giving me the answered questionnaires. Also in general features, they have asked to specify about validity and reliability. So when it comes to validity, I believe that what can increase validity is collecting objective data, quantitative data. So that is where I'll explain validity, and reliability is increasing because of standardization. In fact, for validity, I can take controls also. The important thing is to showcase how in that part, like controls objective data, validity is increasing. So I'll make sure to remember and do that when I'm writing. Also at AS level, they just want us to mention type of data. So I will say that the data is quantitative. They don't want us to get into data analysis. That is reserved for A levels. So I just have to mention quantitative data is collected, and I can end at that. Because we haven't given a hypothesis, I don't have to speak about verification of the hypothesis. Okay, so this is how I think about it in my mind. As you would see, more or less, I take an entire walkthrough as if I was the experimenter, how I would conduct the study in my mind, and then only I begin writing. Now, because I'm discussing this and I'm explaining every step to you right now, it might have seemed lengthy. But when you think about it, it'll hardly take you 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, now let's see how to write in a well-organized manner. Okay, again I will use wording from the question. So Henry could prepare a special room where he would ask participants to arrive individually and wait for their turn to participate in solving maths problems. The beginning might seem abrupt because we are not saying who the participants are, but they have explicitly told us not to mention about the sample. So resist the temptation of mentioning about a sample. Another temptation that might come is to say that this is deception. They are being told it's about maths problems. Actually, they don't have to do anything. Resist that also. They have told you not to write about ethics. You're just saying what the instructions are because they are a part of the procedure. You're not trying to highlight ethics over here. That's one. Yes, here you can talk about validity, but I intend to talk about validity elsewhere. So I'm not mentioning here. But just to tell you how you could talk about validity here is by saying that demand characteristics are reduced when participants are not told that the study is about smell, rather it's about something else, which increases validity. Otherwise, purposely they would have focused more on the smell, which could have prevented them from daydreaming. So you could take that point here. I don't want to mention validity at too many places and elongate my plan, so I'm not specifying it here. I'm just moving ahead in the procedure. As participants wait, the windows and doors will be shut. And without their knowledge, pleasant smell of flowers will be sprayed into the room. This will be done for half the participants. For the other half, no smell will be sprayed. Thus, an independent measures design is used which participant will be exposed to the smell and which will not. will be determined through random assignment. Since random allocation is not a part of the S-level study designing, I am not elaborating on how a lottery method will be used for it. I'm just specifying it here as a passing part of the procedure. Again, here if you want, you can take it as a point of validity and say this is to prevent the individual preferences of smell from confounding the results. But again, I don't intend to take validity over here. Then I will further specify that the windows and doors will be shut to prevent odors coming from outside the room from entering inside and confounding the smell of flowers in the experimental condition. Thus, control will be maintained. For standardization, participants in each condition will have to wait for exactly 30 minutes in the room windows and doors will be shut for both. And in both conditions, they will be not allowed to do anything as they wait. This is important for standardization also, and it is important for control, because if they're going to do something else, then they're unlikely to daydream. But I'm not elaborating more on control, that there's not so much scope to explain each and everything. I'm just telling you how I'm thinking about it. The independent variable, before this let me mention reliability. This standardization will increase the reliability of the plan. Now it's understood what the independent and dependent variable is, but still, like I said, be explicit about everything, so just specify. The independent variable is type of smell, manipulated at two levels, pleasant smell and no smell, the dependent variable is daydreaming, operationalized as frequency and duration of daydreaming. Okay, lots of students wonder, if you don't cover sample and ethics, how will you have a lengthy answer? I hope you can see that. Okay, so those are actually very minor parts of any study. What is more important is the logic or the planning that is going into the study. Okay, keeping that aside, let's continue. After the waiting period of 30 minutes is completed, participants will be informed that no maths competition, I don't remember what I've written. Sorry, what have I written? It's always good to refer back. Yeah, no maths problem solving will take place. Okay, because otherwise it looks abrupt. What competition? There was no competition mentioned. So no maths problem solving will take place. And that they have to answer 2 questions on a questionnaire for the researcher. Okay, now in the last video I've spoken about what if lines are exceeded. Am I writing too much? Are we allowed to exceed the lines? On my video, why it's looking like the answers are lengthy. When you're actually writing on paper, is it space is enough or not? So I'm not getting into that right now. Okay, so I'm continuing with what I'm writing. The 2 questions are: how often did you daydream in the past 30 minutes? Once. Okay, 1 minute. The response choices are: once, twice, thrice, more than thrice. And how long do you estimate you daydreamed for? "10 minutes, 20 minutes, almost full 30 minutes. Since the questions are closed, quantitative data will be collected. Thus, validity of the plan is increased. As daydreaming will be interpreted objectively by comparing the 2 conditions directly. Okay, so some more tips on this answer. In the end, avoid the temptation of getting into descriptive statistics, bar graphs, this, that. They have not asked you for it in the plan. It will not be credited. Secondly, in the syllabus they haven't mentioned. That's what I mean. It is not required at the AS level. Secondly, time yourself. It should not take you more than 15 minutes to write the answer. When I'm explaining, it takes time because I'm discussing with you. When you're writing, you should have practiced so much by the time that you come to the final paper that you're able to write very quickly without having to think which feature was there, you should have practiced so much that you know which features are to be covered. They should be at the tips of your fingers. So that is why practice is very, very important. And like I said, the planning hardly takes 2 or 3 minutes again if you have practiced enough, because it's very stereotypical way that you have to answer, say, an experiment or an interview. Everything has a very standard algorithmic way of answering. So make sure you've practiced to the extent that maximum, I'm emphasizing maximum, it takes you 15 minutes for this plan. Use the rest of the time to write the other answers on the paper, because scenario based can take a little more time if you read the questions carefully. So in my opinion, give more time there, give more time on the 6 markers that we did earlier, and really reduce the time that you need to give this answer. Okay, now let's see the follow-up questions and answer those also quickly. They are going to be simple strengths, weaknesses type of 2 markers which are there, which you can answer in 1 minute each. Describe one practical methodological strength of the procedure you have described in the answer. One of the previous videos of this series only, I remember I have mentioned, practical just means not ethical. They didn't ask you to specify ethics. Definitely they're not going to be asking you about ethics, and they're kind enough to mention again that do not refer to sampling or ethics in your answer. So hopefully you haven't unnecessarily spoken about ethics in the 10 marker part, and definitely you should not be referring to something which is not there in the 10 marker. Okay, methodologically, you have learned research methods unit. You know every every research method has its own strengths and weaknesses. So lab experiments have so many strengths and weaknesses. You can just pick any one and explain it in context of your study. That's how easy it is. Besides that, in all the features, like how we have operationalized the DV, how we've maintained control, standardization, there are so many opportunities to give strengths from those also. What you've learned in methodological issues chapter of your textbook. So much is there from which you can write. In many places where I was writing my 10 marker, you must have noticed I mentioned here I could have spoken about validity, but I'm not doing that. There I could have spoken. So one of those places only where I have left talking about validity, I could easily pick up one of those and fit them over here. For now, which methodological strength is coming to my mind is control. I have maintained control in lab experiment. The most prominent strength is the fact that we maintain control. So because I have maintained control, validity increases. That's the strength. It's just important to give wording from my 10 marker and to properly link what I'm writing to that 10 marker and to answer. Then I'll get full 2 marks. So what I can say is one strength is maintaining control, which increases validity. In this study, the windows and doors were shut. To prevent the extraneous variable of other smells from influencing daydreaming. I could have written influencing the DV, but I'll always try to be as explicit and specific as possible rather than being generic. Next question is, explain why the feature you have identified is the strength. Why control is a strength. I've already mentioned it increases validity in the previous answer. I need not have mentioned, so you can skip that. But here I just have to elaborate upon why it increases validity. So why does control increase validity? Because it allows only the independent variable to influence the DV and nothing else. This thing only I have to explain in the context of my study. So by maintaining control, it was ensured that only the independent variable of type of smell influences the dependent variable of daydreaming and no other confounding, or I can say extraneous variable. This increases, I'm just going to specify it again, so if you want, just skip it from the previous answer, the internal validity of results. So it's as simple as that. Getting these 4 marks is not a big deal as long as you're contextualizing things. The mistake is same which students make here, which they make everywhere else for 2 markers, to give very generic points. Some will go to the extent of just saying it is a lab experiment, that is a strength. Now that is absolutely going to get you 0. The research method by itself is not a strength. You have to say what the strength is. So some will go one step ahead and say controls is a strength. They get 1 mark out of 2, because what control? What are we talking about? And then finally, who gets 2 marks? The one who contextualizes in the study, says this is where I've maintained control and this is how validity is increasing in my designed study. So that is how it is. Another question that comes a lot for 10 markers to me is, do we have to write in first person, third person? See, there are no rules given. So there are lots of students who answer in terms of my study, my plan, my participants. First person they write in. That's absolutely fine. Why I don't like to write in first person and why I tell my students also to write in third person is because if you intend to take psychology in the future, you always write reports in third person. You refer to yourself as an experimenter in the report. So you write the report, but you keep on saying the experimenter. Participants also you address as participants. So in psychology, when it comes to official report writing, the practice has always been to write in third person. That's why I insist on that. I feel habits like that should develop right from the beginning, but it's just a matter of opinion. If you have any doubts about designing the study or any feedback that you want to give on this video, just write in the comments below. Do not contact me personally to talk about anything that I cover in videos. The contact details that I give are meant only for those reasons which I have stated. So if I have given a number to contact me for classes, it is meant to contact me for classes and nothing else. So don't be disappointed when you don't get a response from my phone number or from my email about videos that I have posted here. There is a comment section. I have kept it open so that you comment below, not so that you message me personally. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. This ends the paper 2 solving of March 2024. I hope it's been helpful to you, and I'll see you with another video soon. Bye.